All right, so we're going to get right started at this time. Again, we have our partner with us, which is the National Institutes of Mental Health, and they are here to present a wonderful, informative workshop on exploring worry and anxiety in children and adolescents. We have the pleasure to have us to have joined with us Dr. Berman. Dr. Berman is a clinical psychologist at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland, and she received her clinical psychology doctoral degree from Rosalind Franklin University, the Chicago Medical School. Her clinical training continued with attending the Boston Consortium of Clinical Psychology, where she was a Harvard Medical School Fellowship recipient. She completed a postdoctoral re-specialization in child and adolescent anxiety disorders at Temple University. Her main area of interest continues to be in cognitive behavioral interventions for children, adolescents, and adults with anxiety disorders. So I want us to all welcome Dr. Berman. I also want to highlight that we do have a Q&A section. So if you take a look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a something where you can choose Q&A. If you do not see it on your the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, you can always click on the ellipses, which is the three dots, and you will see where it says Q&A. If you have questions, you can feel free to put your questions there, or at the end of this, we will also have an option for you guys to unmute your mic and share your questions that way as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Berman, and I'm handing over hosting rights to you.
Excellent. I see that I am the host now. So let me just get my slides started. Okay, and then I'll start from here. Let's see. Can everyone see that? Are we good? Okay, excellent. So I'm here to talk about worry and anxiety and what you can do to help your children, but also I have to say these strategies also help adults as well. So, you would just kind of like tweak them up a little bit. But yeah, they're generally really good ways I'm going to review to identify when anxiety is problematic and what you can do about it. I do work for the National Institute of Mental Health, which is in Bethesda, Maryland, which isn't far from you. However, it is with traffic sometimes. So we are close. We are a resource that is federally funded. I don't have any conflicts of interest, and all these opinions are of my own. So my first slide I have just to show, and it's going to highlight that I on a daily basis, I see patients at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda. And honestly, anxiety looks different in every child. So just to kind of highlight that everyone I'll go through some general themes, but overall, everyone presents in their own way and with their own personality. The overall data I want to start with is just to kind of normalize and give you an idea when you're going to see different mental health issues through the lifespan. As we all know, being providers or teachers or parents, that children change very rapidly. And so we can see that even mental health issues change depending on the age. We can see that the highest risk for depression when we look at that are really our adolescents, right? So it's not such a huge thing in the little ones. It's under 2% in the 6 to 11. But once you hit that adolescence from 12 to 17, it's more prevalent, around 6%. For anxiety, as we can see, that's the one that has kind of the most, and it is the most prevalent in many ways. It does kick in a bit more, over 6% in 6 to 11-year-olds, and then 12 to 17 is again where we see this uptick. When we talk about behavior disorders, we're referring to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or oppositional defiant disorder. So those may be things where kids have problems like really listening to teachers and parents and really kind of do the opposite of what they want. And that's primarily, you're going to see more in the younger ages, and that makes that one different. But it's a really prevalent, mental health is very prevalent, as we're all very aware on social media, in the news. We understand that there is a general uptick in anxiety disorders overall through the last 10 years. Why I want to talk about the brain is because depending on the kid's age or the adolescent's age, we really want to approach anxiety many in different ways, right? So realize that my 8-year-old that has social anxiety or worries about their future looks different than my 17-year-old that might have social anxiety. And what we want to know, what we want parents to know, teachers to know, even practitioners like me, I have to remind myself every day, is that depending on the age is what they can control. The prefrontal cortex, which I'll review quickly, is just the front of your brain. They call it executive functioning. It is like an executive assistant. It filters information, makes checklists for us, slows us down, helps us think things through. When you look at this lovely image on the right side of this slide, you can see how obviously we all would be very, aware that the 5-year-old does not have much control over their emotions, tantrums, their behavior. But we can see the preteen brain is not getting that much better. That shows that it's still developing. That red area is where it's really not that mature. We still see some, green areas pretty consistently, right, in the teen brain. So we're still really having a lot of development, a lot of changes. And again, the front of our brain controls what we do. We always have our base emotion, which is always there. And then 20-year-olds, we're not really fully formed, our frontal lobes, till we're about our mid 20s. So it helps parents and everyone understand what to expect depending on age. There's a lot of things that we can do to help cultivate, help build these skills. And you'll see me talk a lot about how we want to engage the front of our lobes most, the prefrontal cortex, when we're having strong emotions. What's really cool about the brain is it is specifically in these ages, but obviously now we've learned up to like at many ages is it's really plastic. It can change. We can really help kids develop coping skills, approaches to different emotions, approaches to different problems and behaviors by just practice. And new skills are easily learned. What we want to know is though, really teens specifically, but even the little ones are reward sensitive at this time, right? Through meaning they really need to hear and feel positive emotions. They respond very strongly. So you'll see that this science I'll take into the coping skills that we'll use to help deal with anxiety. They also, and this is very true of many teens that I work with, they have difficulty seeing the whole picture of their behavior and what that might mean. So cross training is important. What I mean by that is we're going to, again, really think, what do we do as adults naturally because our frontal lobes are really formed, and teach those skills and really develop that part of the brain when dealing with kids and adolescents and skills. And the biggest one of all, this is for us as well, but because there's so much development during this time, sleep is terribly important. As we all know, we cannot function well with little sleep. Regretfully, a lot of kids, adolescents have extra responsibilities, have extra activities, so sometimes sleep is at a premium. But we want to try and put that first, and that really is our first line of defense against dealing with really strong emotions. So, what do we know, or how can we identify a kid might have excessive anxiety? Because honestly, anxiety is really normal. We all have some little bit of it. I left work at 5 and had plenty of anxiety driving my car. And why that was important is for me to stay focused, right? It keeps your brain focused. It keeps me planning ahead, right? And knowing that I gotta pick up my kids at aftercare and then make it here down to my mini office by a certain time. So we all need it to kind of drive our behavior. If I didn't have anxiety in that situation, maybe I had a little excess because I don't love driving, but I would have just taken my time from work at 5. Maybe I would have stopped for a Starbucks. That would have been good. I made my way in. But sometimes we need that anxiety to drive us. When is it excessive? Is when we're hearing a lot of the kids we work with or our children ourselves thinking a lot before and after events. And not just stressful events, many different events, right? And not just hearing it once a week, or let's say there is a major event in a community. That's okay to worry after an event like that. But we're talking about a consistent worry either before or after or both. Irritability can actually be a sign of anxiety. Think about it. I think I was irritable in my car. Just generally saying, when we feel anxious, that may be a way it comes out. So you may say excessive irritability in your children or adolescents, problems sleeping because they're worrying, their body is tense, it's hard to focus, they're on guard all day. That will lead to problems of sleeping, and that could be falling asleep, staying asleep, or getting up too early. Problems being alone. This is typical of our little bitty ones that we might see, but I've seen it as old as 13-year-olds where they just don't want to be in parts of, the house, the apartment without their mom or primary caregiver or the person, or even their brother or sister, whoever they feel most comfortable with. They don't like to be the center of attention. So, we're not saying someone who doesn't like to sing or perform, that's okay. But like if a teacher calls on them or another friend goes up to them and asks them something, they don't like eyes on them. Their brain kind of interprets that. That's kind of more that social anxiety. They avoid raising their hand in class. And again, that's a consistent thing that you're seeing, not just the class where maybe they don't know the answer, but all the classes where they might even feel like they know the answer, but they refuse to do it because they're feeling anxious. Excessively self-conscious. Goodness, adolescents and even young kids are very self-conscious, but when they're worrying about that, and that's kind of driving their behavior. Panic, so physical symptoms, sweating, heart racing, complaining of dizziness, just having really intense physiological reactions with certain situations, sweating, headaches, needing to go to the bathroom a lot, freezing. So we know the brain with anxiety, it's either fight, flight, or freeze. Those are the three ways we all tend to react. And everyone's different in which way they do. So some kids might, when a new person's talking to them, freeze. Or I have plenty of social anxiety kids who they talk so much. So I would say, that's almost kind of that fight, right? Worry, butterflies is responding to like physical symptoms, the fight or flight response, like I just reviewed. Problems concentrating. So, we may think a child has attentional issues and it might be related to ADHD. It could be anxiety. Because if we're worrying all day about what might happen to someone who's really close to us and we're sitting in school, it's going to be hard to focus, right? So where we're thinking and worrying about, what that kid said to us that was really hurtful, and we're really thinking about it all day, it's hard to focus in that classroom. And so many more. We could do a whole presentation just on what the excessive signs are. Overall, when it becomes problematic, because again, as I said, we all have anxiety and it ebbs and flows throughout our life. When it keeps us away from the things we either want or need to do. That's how I couch it, right? We don't all need to be singers. We don't all need to be mathematicians. But when it's something we either need to do or really want to do, like I really want to make that new friend, I hear a lot. Like I want to talk to that kid next to me in class. I don't want to feel so alone. So when you avoid things versus approach the things you want. Interference. So this is when the parents come to me. They say, oh, I can see it's interfering in their schoolwork. Or you know what? I can't get them to bed. I can't leave to go to work, because they're clinging to me, right? So it's interfering in the parents' life. They sleep in my bed every night. I'm having a hard time sleeping because I have a small bed. I need this kid out of my bed. So, really where it's interfering and it's distressing. Usually you'll see that in the kids, but sometimes you won't see the distress. You may see just the irritability or the crankiness. And most important is, again, it's a persistent thing that we see. This is not something that just comes and goes for a day or two. Or again, if there's a major event that occurs or a news event happens, it's okay for a kid to be anxious for a couple weeks, but it's when it's something that goes beyond the time that we would want. So these are the different anxiety disorders. Separation is the worry or fear where, being away from our primary caregiver, or again, I've seen it with brothers or sisters, right? When that brother or sister has been a very close, kind of confidant for them. They again maybe can go to school, but maybe they can't, or maybe they go to school, but every morning it's a struggle to drag them out of the house, right? They definitely are the kids sometimes that have problems sleeping by themselves. They don't want to be alone. They will grab sister, brother, anyone to kind of stay with them. They worry about bad things happening to themselves or others. If an event or a traumatic event occurs where something has happened to a loved one, that can happen. That could cause this, but we want to make sure it's either that or a trauma response. But these are our little shadows, as some parents or grandparents will say. They follow us all around the house. Generalized anxiety disorder is just a general worrier. There are little old souls. They may worry how they do in school. They may worry about, their parents' health. They may worry, and this will go from thing to thing, or they have a couple areas. It's not just worrying about parents' health. And we also have to be careful if there is a parental health issue, just to take that into account to see. But it's excessive. So maybe all day they're thinking about it, or they're worrying about it during school, or they're worrying about it and it's interfering with schoolwork. They also may worry about their performance and their future. Social anxiety is the most common one you're going to see across the ages, right? And it's actually one of the most impairing, and it's one that puts kids at risk factor for depression when they're older, and a risk factor for substance abuse and use. Because you know we have, if we are scared to be around new people or different people that we are not familiar with, that's something we have to do in life. So this is a tricky one that I think really deserves a lot of attention, and these kids many times get missed because they're the quiet ones in the corner of the classroom, or they're the compliant kid at home. Um, and it's an important one for all of us to keep our eyes out for, because it does impact them in a very silent way. Specific phobias actually can be impairing enough in school or home. One of the common one I hear about is vomit phobia. I'm treating one right now where a kid is worried that someone's going to throw up near them, or they themselves might throw up, and then they have lots of worries about health related issues. But it's where it's interfering enough when it becomes a phobia. We all can have just our worries about not liking spiders and things like that. But it has to be something where it's kind of stopping us for doing something, or making, like, again, my patients usually have problems in school. They're worried about the kid that sneezes next to them, or the one that might be sick, or they're worried about touching that desk. And you can imagine if you're thinking about that all day, you're having a hard time focusing. Panic disorder, you're going to see a little bit older, more in the adolescents and adults, but it's an important one. It's the fear of fear. It's the fear of physical symptoms and panic attacks. And about 40% of us will have one uncued panic attack in our life. So we do want to, it is something that can be common that can occur. And selective mutism is when kids are fine to talk in the house. They're real talkers, usually outgoing in their home. They do not speak to anyone else outside the house. This can be, having dual languages in the home can be a risk factor for this as well. So just to be aware that that's sometimes something that can occur because the kids get nervous, and it's kind of a form of social anxiety. So this is a really important one, and this is a good take home for all of you, right? Because you're going to run into someone who's having physical symptoms of anxiety in your life. And this is what we do for kids as well. And it's counterintuitive to being a kind of teacher, professional, parental role, right? How we handle it. But what we may hear and we may see is people talking about stomach aches, headaches, nausea, having to pee a lot, tightness in chest. A lot of people miss, especially older individuals, meaning like my age, I'm not saying that old, but may miss the signs of a panic attack as a sign of heart attack. So that's pain in chest, sweating, dizziness, lightheadedness, heart racing, and all these symptoms come on relatively quickly, and many times come out of the blue, but they also can be triggered by something in particular, right? What we want to see here is, and hopefully you guys will get these slides, or we'll give you a copy that you can send around to individuals if they'd like, is really our brain is turning on. These are not made up, these sensations. No, people are truly feeling awful sweating. A lot of people you'll see shake, or you'll see they have to stay in the bathroom. They cannot come out. And when someone's having a panic attack or panic symptoms, remember just to sit and listen to them. The worst thing you can do is jump in and problem solve. Well, that's what we're all kind of wired to do as, adults for children. We just listen. It's better to let them listen. The best thing you can do is be a calming influence. As I said, if you can't, because you're freaking out, and I know sometimes I freak out when my kids freak out, then get that person, that neighbor, or walk away for a few minutes. Try and be a calming influence. Because if you're freaking out and they're freaking out, I remember I had a very lovely mom and daughter, and they were driving, I think, even to my appointment, and the poor girl was having a panic attack or panic in the car from a school day. Something happened at school, and she's upset, and she's feeling tingly, and her heart is racing, and her mom's a nurse, and her mom's like, oh no, are you having, what's wrong with her? And the two of them calling me, and they're just working themselves up together so much. They pulled over, and then they pulled over to the side of the road, and then they had, they called an ambulance. And so all of that just continued to work the panic up. We want to try and be calm. And if you can't be calm, try and fake it. The big thing that's always really reassuring, it ends. It ends. We cannot stay at level of panic. The body won't let you. Okay. So if someone is really upset, be there with them in the best way they want to, and remind them that this ends. Grounding is something you can Google. We could do a whole, again, presentation on that. It's just different ways of tapping into your senses. So it'd be like, if I'm with someone and I'm driving my car, that poor mom, and your daughter's next to her, mom could say to her, if she could get through, if she was trying to calm down, hey, touch the car, put your hand, open the window, feel the wind. So it's tapping into either, taste, touch, those type of senses. Okay. So that's going to help ground you when you're having panic. It is something, again, this is kind of just a reiteration of what I just said, but knowing that these are normal symptoms, right? If you look back, this is our brain firing. We are not crazy or weird or anything wrong with us. It was very protective for us in general. It's not something we have to fix. And when we ride it out without trying to fix it, it actually goes down much more quickly. So, you know, this can also happen in the school setting. A lot of kids struggle with test anxiety, right? Worrying about during a test. And this is a little, kind of small, example of what you can do. What's the answer? What do we do? Because if we say we're freaking, this is the same kind of thing. We're freaking out. We're sitting, we're looking at the test. We're like, I don't know. I can't do this. Think. You're going to become more blank, right? Calm your body down. Take some deep breaths. Do some tensing and relaxing your muscles. Remind yourself you're not in danger, although it feels like it. I'm okay. And hopefully the thinking brain will kick back in. So our thinking brain shuts down when we have panic. So it's important to calm the body down in any way that we can. Some kids use water. Sip of water would be helpful. And then going, I'm okay. This is a test. It's not going to kill me, and try then to get on focus. But try not to push yourself to do things. That'll make it worse. Supportive new mindset. So anxious kids are always just lovely, exceptional beings who are really many times hard on themselves. They don't feel great about having anxiety, right? They want to do really well. They want to overcome it. They want to do well in school. They want to have the friends they want to have. Letting them know, that there's there's no perfection, right? And I think we all know that logically, but it's an important thing to hear and remind kids over and over again. And that's perfect in any sense. Some of my worriers don't worry about school, but they worry about how they behave or how thoughtful they are. Obviously socially anxious kids are going to worry regularly about, oh, what did I say? So one of my favorite quotes, experience is the name everyone gives to their mistakes. The more we can understand that, mistakes happen every day. The other thing that's really helpful is when we are anxious and our amygdala turns on, we get tunnel vision, right? And it's actually, we can see it when we look at MRI data that our brain is only focused on little things. And we don't see the whole big picture. When anything hard or anxiety provoking goes wrong. And again, this is a debatable slide because a lot of people say, well, was it Michael Jordan a perfectionist? Sure, he was probably, but let's just really look at kind of how his attitude, I think, even helped him probably be even a better player. So I missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. It's a lot for someone who's known as one of the best in the sport. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So it's really, kind of cultivating that mindset that if we focus on those things, that it's a big picture and not just that tunnel vision of the one mistake we made or the one thing we said or the one thing that happened to us. So what do you want to do in school? And even this is at home. You want to be sensitive. I work with plenty of parents that have their own anxiety and plenty of parents that don't. And sometimes, they're just like, oh, it's not so bad. Don't worry about it. And well, many of us know it's not that bad. There's a lot, as being an adult, we've gone through different stages of our life. But just listen. That's all being sensitive can be, your own version of that. Be educated, which you're all here right now, which is fantastic. Know what is anxiety so you can help identify it. And also what are the skills that you can do to combat it. Give positive feedback because when we're anxious, we're only paying attention to the threat. Be calm. That is, again, one of the best ones that you can do. Hold on. Be consistent. So That does help. So I'll give a small example. What I mean by that is, let's say we're working on a kid with a kid who is having a hard time falling asleep by themselves, and we need to because we have stuff to do, or we have a bunch of other kids we have to attend to. Letting them know, okay, I'm going to put you in your bedroom. I'm going to come check on you in 5 minutes. Making sure you stick to that, and make sure that you do that then for the next 5 or 6 nights. Being consistent in your behavior and expectations. And focus on problem solving skills. Again, we get tunnel vision when we're anxious, and we want to think of what can we do? Because there is always a solution to our problems. We may not like the solution, but there's always a solution. Don't, as a parent or teacher or caregiver, accommodate too much. Okay. What that means is, if that kid is afraid to order that food at a restaurant, and maybe don't make them order the whole meal right at, when they're at the drive-thru. The drive-thru always stresses me out. I feel like, through McDonald's, my kids are screaming what they want. I can't hear the person, but maybe you have them just order the drink that day. Meaning we want to help them learn how to do little things and little things. Because what we've seen with anxiety is it makes us feel like we don't have control. And the interesting thing is all these kids do have control. But again, it's our natural inclination as like caregivers to want to accommodate, to want to help them avoid. We don't want them to feel pain, right? So don't accommodate too much. Don't let them, don't single them out or ridicule them. That's more an example of in the classroom where, and I get this a lot from my socially anxious kids, where very good meaning teachers, all of them lovely, no one being, kind of out to ridicule a kid, will say if they have a socially anxious kid and let's say they're not raising their hand, or maybe they do finally raise their hand. Oh, look, wow, you did it. That's kind of the worst thing you can do for a socially anxious kid. Or, you don't ever raise your hand, and saying that to a whole class. That's what I mean by that. That's that one I give more to like the teachers and school personnel. But it's important that the teacher's not meaning to do anything bad. Like they're just being normal. But when you have a socially anxious kid and you say that, it actually causes the kid to shut down more. I would see this when I have some patients where a very good meaning mom, I had a kid who just kind of froze. I asked a question and he froze, right? And it was probably a tough question. I can't remember. And the mom goes, "Do you want me to answer? Are you okay?" And it's just like paying attention to that versus just letting him sit with that. And then, kind of having either me pull that answer out of him or kind of move on. Excessive reassurance means you tell that really means when you have these nervous kids saying, "Oh, everything will be fine." Well, guess what? Not everything is fine. We always have solutions, but it's kind of not really telling, giving them that it'll be okay, having them figure out that it can be okay. Being too directive, so many of us do that. Oh, hey, here's 5 ways to solve that. Let the kids come up with ideas, and criticizing too much. Oh, why not let me go? There we go. So the best thing we can do if you can't do anything else is be a good active listener. Just let them talk. Even if you can't solve it, that works wonders for kids. Again, a lot of the things I do are not really, that intense, but it is really hard to actually active listen. Let me tell you. Although we are all told, even me, will say like, "Hey, you need to be a better listener." I need to be a better listener at home. I do great at my job, but when I am home, it is off. And because we're just human and that's what happens. But active listening and just helping them express their feelings. When you have some kids who are worried about certain situations, role play things. Help them figure out. I can't tell you how many kids said, "I don't even know how to, ask this teacher for help." Okay, well, let's practice it together. Okay, I'll be the teacher, you be you, or the kids always love it if I'm, them and they're the teacher. And you can do that as a professional or as a parent. Obviously, looking at social media, keeping social media away, we could have 5 lectures on that. Yeah, it is something that's really important that we have to discuss with the kids. There's all kinds of stuff, it's really not recommended for the kids, but I know it's out there. I have a child and like all her friends have phones and she's in 5th grade. So it's really tough. I don't think it's an easy thing to contend with. So it's important we have open discussions because social media can trigger a lot of different, but really we've seen it exacerbates anxiety or depression symptoms. Also, I always am like a big advocate of you as a caregiver. Doesn't have to be the only person. There are lovely social workers. There are awesome teachers. There are awesome coaches in the school system. Just finding those adults that are a good buffer or are a good problem solver for that kid in the school. You do not have to have all the solutions. I don't. I use plenty of the school for help, and that's really a good place. We want to make sure that the kids have a few people to go to, not just one. So what can you do? Model being a problem solver. Show how you mess up at home. anxious kids love to hear that you mess up too, honestly. Or like my son the other night was like, what's the word? He dropped a big thing of milk at the grocery store 2 weeks ago. And he's like, did you ever drop anything at the grocery store? I was like, oh yeah, I have. I've dropped blueberries. I was like, that's worse because they roll everywhere and then everyone steps on them. But saying, letting him know that anxiety is normal and that we want to problem solve when those things happen. Social belonging, gosh, kids need friends. They don't need 50 friends. I don't care. They can have one, just whatever is individual to that child. Some just need one or two really good friends. Some do need 25 friends. That's fine. Another good place to always get social belonging is either clubs or sports. And you don't have to have the sports kid or music or art, whatever their passions, or even Dungeons and Dragons. That is a social support system, in my opinion. I don't care what it is. We really want to just capitalize on what that kid is into, and make them find one or two kids that have similar interests. That's what I mean by social belonging. And it works even better than us, I have to say, I think, having a couple of good friends. Positive peer support. So identifying those other friends that of your kids that are good models. Like they're sometimes better at, counseling my patients than myself, right? Because they're living, that life, right? And I don't always have that kind of lived experience. So it's important to know, oh, let's identify two friends at school or someone else that you can talk to. And boundaries models, meaning just don't teach them. A lot of these kids are people pleasers. They should not say yes to everything, and we should not as well as adults. So how do we want to talk to them, right? And this is just, kind of, I know for my parents' generation, even wasn't something the way that they spoke. To me, even, it just, what can you say versus it's going to be okay? This is kind of what I'm getting at. You're brave, you're resourceful, you're a thinker. Essentially translate this somehow to your kids. You have everything you need inside you to cope, because they do, right? With things brilliantly. Don't let your mind tell you you can't do hard things. You absolutely can. So again, however you would say these kind of things, but this is just kind of the general gist of what we want to say when a kid is feeling anxious. So again, if you don't know what to say, just listen. I get it. It's hard. Just listen, empathize with them. Accept. So don't try and change and fix it in that moment. The more we accept with what's going on emotionally in that moment or what's going around, we can't change that bully. We can't change that you got a D. What do we do then? What can we do? I have faith in you. What's going on in your head? Again, this is kind of the structure. I want you to be able to say it however you want to. And let's figure out what we can do. And let's face those fears. Let's talk to that teacher. Let's say hi to that friend. And as you see, I keep saying, try to place limits on social media. I throw that in. What to not say to someone who's anxious. So this is what people a lot say they really find very helpful. Don't say, quit being dramatic, because all these things will shut the kid down. Okay. You're just being lazy. You need to toughen up. Come on, it's easy. When are you going to grow up? These are when kids are experiencing anxiety or anxious situations. You're crazy. These are all kind of invalidating. Can't you try harder? Pull yourself together. All these kids want to, in my opinion, any kid wants to try hard. There's just barriers that make it, hard for them to do things sometimes. So that's why we don't want to say, can't you try harder? I think every kid I miss would try harder if they could. Instead, I know it's hard for you. Take time. It's okay. How can I help? Asking questions can always be a good one. What do you need right now? Want to talk? And I see more than just your anxiety. That's what I love about you. So again, this is for kids, whatever helps them relax. It doesn't have to be deep breathing. It doesn't have to be meditation. It could be. We know that deep breathing is terribly helpful, right? Yoga, exercise, like I said, sports, any sports that they like. If they just like to go out and ride their bike, that's fine. Clubs are wonderful. Even any religious organizations. Music obviously is so therapeutic, even just to listen to. That doesn't mean they have to be playing an instrument. They can just listen to it, help them calm their body down. This is more for my perfectionist kids and adults. It's really, really mentally helpful to find something that you like to just do for fun. Like, I like to sew. My stuff looks awful, but it's very therapeutic, and eventually I'll get better, right? Socialization. I really should I learned to crochet. I should have brought that on. They look like it's supposed to be a duck. It doesn't look like a duck, but it's really therapeutic for me to do it, right? Socialization in any form that's really helpful for the kid, and support. Let them know that you're there for them. So this is us. We see kids 8 to 17. We are a federally funded institution, so any of the services that we provide are at no cost to anyone. We see kids, we do evaluations. People can participate in the study, just be part of an evaluation. They can also just chat with us. The number there is really helpful. That is our nurse that's been with us for a long time, and kind of a clearinghouse. So let's say even just like, I need help. Is this anxiety? Or, do you have someone in the community that you recommend? We're just here kind of as a resource overall. This is our study, but we are really just experts in the field that can help point you in any directions. We also partner with other parts of NIMH. So if you have, we may say, oh, doesn't sound like anxiety, but maybe it's an attentional issue or an irritability or depression, and we can help you either provide you resources in your community, help you get in contact with your schools, or also we can provide some of it within our research setting. So I'm sure people have questions or one or two. Please let me know if you have any. And I covered a lot of information, but that's why this will be great to be online. And again, we'll give out the slides as well for anybody.
All right, I'm going to just give one moment if anybody wants to capture these QR codes.
Mhm.
All right, and then I'm going to reclaim my hosting rights. Where reclaim host. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Berman. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but it was so helpful. I do want to check in and see if I don't see any Q&A questions, but that might be a glitch in terms of how this Zoom was set up with us going back and forth with hosting. So I do want to, if there's anyone who has a question right now, I would like for you to unmute yourself and share your question.
Yes, this is Siebold. I have a question. So, Dr. Berman, how does the loss of sleep due to excessive cell phone or computer use affect the brain and contribute to the anxiety and depression that we see with middle schoolers who are like around 11 to 14 years of age?
Yeah, I mean, this is again a fantastic point, and this is why if there's any intervention to do, it's really sleep. That's where I start, because if a child or adolescent or even adult is not sleeping, what it does to the brain is it doesn't allow us to work at it's not firing at the right speed, at the right, level of kind of energy, right? So if we're not able to we're not able to think things through. We're not able to concentrate as well. We're also not able to regulate our emotions as well. So that front of the brain needs a lot of power. We get our power through sleep, right? We all think about it. We get our energy through sleep. And if we don't have that, we really can't regulate our emotions. We can't tell ourselves, okay, you know what? It's okay. Like, let me go talk to someone. I am feeling depressed. It doesn't allow us to problem solve as well. So I'm glad you bring that up, because social media, this is the phones and sleep, I think go hand in hand, and it's something we have to really be thoughtful of. And again, just that intervention alone, reducing that time and increasing sleep, can be a huge help with treating anxiety and depression.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Siebold. And I actually was able to see the Q&A, and I did see your question in there. So thank you for unmuting and sharing. Does anybody else have a question for Dr. Berman? Okay. Well, if not, I do want to thank you, Dr. Berman, and we can actually go ahead and round out our virtual workshop today. I do want to share that I have put into the chat a evaluation. So for everyone who has joined us today for this virtual workshop, I would love for you guys to take a moment to complete this evaluation to give us some feedback on what it is that you've learned today and how it impacted you. I also wanted to share with you guys also that there are mental health professionals and mental health teams within your children's school buildings. And so I wanted to identify who those mental health professionals are. You have your school counselors, you have your school psychologists. Many schools are starting to also hire school social workers like myself. And I just want to highlight, March is Social Work Month. So happy Social Work Month to any of our social workers that are also on this call. And you also have school-based clinicians. These school-based clinicians are also coming from the Office of Student Support. Their partnerships with community-based outpatient mental health agencies, and they will have a what they consider a school-based clinician that is assigned to your child's school. There's also another resource as well that is in your school buildings. I'm going to say most of your school buildings, and I can speak for Kenmore that we do have several here. And those are student advocates. Okay, and these persons are also here to support the mental health and wellness, well-being overall of our students. So you have a lot of resources within the school building, and you also have resources out in the community as well. National Institutes of Mental Health just shared that they are a resource. We also have a partnership with Hazel Health here with Prince George's County Public Schools to offer virtual telehealth mental health appointments, and that can be accessed through your child's school counselor. So you can request, that type of referral through the school counselor, and they will help to facilitate the referral and also facilitate the meetings, making sure that your student is participating and has access to those meetings. Another resource as well, and you may have heard of this resource as well, it's the 988. 988 is the crisis helpline. It's a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365 days a year hotline that you can call. And here in Prince George's County, you're able to actually access not only the suicide hotline for crisis, but also our mobile crisis team as well. So calling 988, you will be able to also get in touch with the mobile crisis team. If there's ever a time that you feel like your child or even yourself needs support in a mental health crisis. So those are some supports that we do have available to you here in the school and also outside of the school. And I just implore you to reach out, to your school counselors or your administration. And if you're not aware of who exactly these different mental health professionals are within your building, that at least you're able to reach out to these individuals and they're able to connect you with the various mental health professionals in the building that could help or help you to get a referral outside for your child's needs. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us. And I hope that you guys have received something valuable that you can take on with you in your day-to-day lives. Thank you so much and have a wonderful night. And I'm going to stop the recording now.